So I thought nerds and our offspring were going to save the world. Turns out a good chunk of them were just absolutely terrible parents. And it's up to people, I guess, like me, and hopefully you too, to do something about that. You think that of all people, nerds would be doing a fantastic job of handing down our hobbies to the next generation, but when you have a bunch of millennial and Gen X man children who turn into something below a child because the IP or franchise that they've built their entire personality around decided to do a different interpretation of something that they held so dear. This isn't me defending the quality of recent things like Marvel and Star Wars, but I am gonna sure as hell call out shenanigan behavior and logic, because while I 100% understand wanting to share these stories with your kids, the stories in media, that help shape you. But if you are so thick and vapid that you can't understand progress, you can't understand the evolution of storytelling, and eventual reinterpretations of stuff that was done a million times before, then I don't really have an answer for you. In my opinion, you'll just be a grump face, and your kids will never want to try out your hobbies or do anything that interests you because of the fact that you just act so snobby about it. And that's a fact.
They're not gonna let you in at the country club with that.
I don't want no part of your tight-ass country club, you freak, bitch!
In an effort to keep myself somewhat constrained, I'm going to go over the three biggest sources of gatekeeping I've witnessed throughout my life in spaces that, even I have been guilty of gatekeeping in with myself. We're talking about anime, video games, and Teen Titans Go, which is basically my straw man for things like Star Wars, Harry Potter, comic books, and all that fun stuff. I'm going to try and be as constrained as possible because each topic could be its own hour-long video. And I mean, that would just be me talking about the Pokemon fandom itself. My hope is that by the end of this video, you can approach the content of younger generations with a more open and encouraging mind. Believe it or not, most of kids' memes today, like Gen Alpha and younger, most of their memes are just millennial memes recontextualized. The easiest example of this is the whole skibbity toilet thing, which is literal proof that memes are the DNA of the human soul. If this video gets 100 likes, I will make that skibbity toilet video, and I will do that before the end of January of 2024. Also, if you're interested in more postmodern critiques and observations and video essays about how I view media in regards to something that we hand down to the next generation, like, share, subscribe, YouTubey things. I'm almost at 200 subscribers, so hey, you could be number 200, that'd be awesome. So while looking for some, good gatekeeping examples for this video, I came across an article from the Otaku Lifestyle blog. It's a beautiful otaku life. And oh boy, let me preface this by saying, from everything that I've seen, this blog and the socials and everything like that are all completely defunct. Don't go bother this person. Don't go trying to hunt them down. The reason I say this is because in 2019 they posted an article titled "Gatekeeping Isn't Evil, It's Necessary." It starts off with this absolutely enlightened centrist take of, on a community level, the most dangerous mentality to internalize is one that wholeheartedly vilifies gatekeeping. I'm sorry, but right off the bat, I'm getting a whiff of pretentiousness here. It reminds me of the first line of Pride and Prejudice. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of good fortune must be in want of a wife. Same level of just airiness to it, putting on airs, so to speak. Now, the article starts off alright, talking about how older fans of geek, nerd, and niche culture, I like that term though, niche culture, imposed a set of standards upon newcomers that must be met before being accepted within their respective communities. The writer really starts cooking though when it comes to this quote. In the past several years, this behavior has come under attack, and rightfully so. Bitter, spiteful nerds, still sour from years of ostracism from mainstream social conventions, chose to use the gatekeeping paradigm abusively. to try and enforce homogeny within their communities. They have a strong closer with this intro with, it's a well-known narrative. The quote-unquote old guard had internalized social ostracism as an intrinsic part of the experience of being a quote-unquote geek. So we are primed to reject certain groups, women for example, from their spaces right off the bat. Now, this is when some of my alarms kind of started going off a little bit. I try to give people the benefit of the doubt, though. At this point, I thought the rest of the article was just going to be subversive. Maybe talking about how we need to gatekeep chuds like the one he's pretending to be out of fandoms because, they whine about how things like diversity and inclusion hold back the core of said community, and somehow by making sure that we don't let new people in, this will also ensure that somehow we get new stories that are also somehow better. As a result, once this behavior was beaten back, geek culture as a whole took up a hard-line stance against any instance of gatekeeping and became all about quote-unquote inclusion. Yeah, this is where the alarms really start going off. The thought process being that ostracized feels bad, and all geeks know how it feels to be ostracized. So geeks have no right to ostracize others. I'm sorry, but what? Now, I feel like most of you guys, if you're watching this, you probably know that the whole point of inclusion and diversity and things of that nature is not only to, others be included in spaces where even marginalized groups like nerds go ahead and marginalize others like, black and brown kids. And obviously it's not about the fact that, because I felt bad, I shouldn't let others be bad. First off, since when was having empathy a bad thing? They straight up just, with sarcasm, they straight up just say that, for some reason having empathy for others because of the fact that you were ostracized is apparently a bad thing. Now, believe it or not, I actually am a person of color, yes.
Black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm blacker than black, and I'm black, y'all.
Shocking, I know. I am mixed, black and Korean.
Black, yo, I'm black, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm blacker than black, and I'm black, y'all.
So most of the gatekeeping I experienced was really twofold. You can't pretend to be the non-black character, and real black kids don't watch anime. Nowadays, it seems like it's damn near a requirement to be an anime head in the black community. Nothing wrong with that, but I mean, also, how can I be upset that we also have queens like Megan Thee Stallion and Michael B. Jordan that are completely representing the community, especially, black anime fans. We have Megan doing JoJo and Sailor Moon cosplays in Japan. Yes, please, sign me up. Also, as well, the producer and showrunner of the live-action One Piece, dude is black. The production leads behind the critically acclaimed and much beloved Afro Samurai, black. Literally Samuel L. Jackson levels of black.
I'm blickety black, blacker than black, I'm blacker than black, yo, because I'm black and I'm black.
And I think it's something very interesting, it's something I want to learn more about. It's a very weird and endearing and oftentimes contradictory relationship between black culture and Asian culture. I'm kind of surprised that we're finally at the place now where rap and K-pop crossovers are the new normal, but sometimes I'm a little bit ahead of my time. In regards to how I approached my anime addiction with my kids, I gave them access to all of my favorites, but I never really forced them to watch much of it. I would suggest things here and there, or put on something I was more interested in, especially, newer stuff, because I don't really have the time to sit down and just watch new stuff. But I let them have the same experience that I had growing up, and just kind of let them pick their own choices based on things like cover art, the description, or just, hey, that scene kind of looked cool. I mean, instead of forcing my kids to sit through the first few sagas of DBZ, I just showed them bits and pieces of what they asked about. I just showed them bits and pieces just so they knew the most important shit. They didn't really give a shit about Goku until he showed up in Fortnite, and they were curious enough to watch some episodes with me. I didn't start them off with Farmer of a Shotgun, just enough within some of the later seasons for them to understand that Goku can defeat Superman, Goku's a terrible father, and Piccolo is his real daddy and Piccolo is black. That's all you really need to know because the rest of it is just loud, topless battles. They also understand that JoJo is the superior shonen battle anime, and if I force them to watch anything, it will probably be Diamond is Unbreakable, because that's the best one. But seriously, like, you only take suggestions from those that you deem not a threat, in the sense that in your hobby, you're just going to end up Uzumakiing yourself into the creative equivalent of a slug, or creatively sluggish. The only way to experience anything new is to leave your proverbial town that is known as your comfort zone. How is that for a metaphor? And at the same time, like, at the end of the day, like, it's just freaking anime, goddammit. Like, why are we having this conversation in the first place? They're cartoons, they're made for different people, and it is a billion-dollar industry. Why are people trying to defend a billion-dollar industry? Speaking of billion-dollar industries, let's talk about video games. I'm a bit hesitant to say that video games are getting better, but compared to like 10 to 15 years ago, there is a very, very, very big difference. As someone who's been gaming since the 90s and someone who's raising 4 kids over the past 10 years, I feel like there is some weird generational gatekeeping amongst parents when it's time to introduce them to things relating to gaming as a whole, both tabletop and video games. But for the sake of this video and the sake of this argument, we're going to kind of just stick with video games. But a lot of it can apply, obviously. So I found another article. It's called How Gatekeeping is Holding the Gaming Community Together. This was written by a college kid in 2020. We were all in a very weird place at that time, so don't go bother him. This guy brings up Gamergate, but then dismisses it right away, which to me means that they're just using it as an emotional primer. I mean, here's the way that they kind of bring it up. What does matter is that Gamergate proved that there is a silent disconnect between industry cultures and the culture of the fan bases that they cater to. And if given the proper motivation and catalyst, subcultures will gatekeep and protect what they see as theirs. First off, this is false. Gamergate was literally an action plan that former Trump ally Steve Bannon, who learned how to mobilize online trolls from literally running Chinese gold farms for WoW, was the one who was one of the main driving forces behind Gamergate. Yes, people argue about ethics in gaming and all this other stuff, but I mean, pretty much all of that ended up being debunked. So it was really just a way for angry men to try and gatekeep anyone that they didn't like, especially women, out of games. Now listen to this next part. In many ways, gatekeeping is the only way that subcultures that are founded on commercial products can meaningfully resist commercialization. In the context of subcultures, commercialization almost always means the death of the culture itself, watering down of the property and eventual sublimation into the pop culture sump. Some popular franchises simply can't survive commercialization at all. Now, genuinely curious, what franchise didn't survive commercialization? I really can't think of any franchise that basically failed because there was too much toys of it. If you can think of one, leave it in the comments below. Let me know, because I'm genuinely curious to hear what you guys would think. But anyways, continuing with the article. Take Warhammer 40k, for example. My beloved 40k. It's a franchise built on an incredibly violent, grimdark setting that takes glee in making sure that every faction is about the bad guy. Fascist theologies battle over depraved anarchists and supremacist aliens over who gets to genocide who. The lore and models are unapologetically gothic and operatic. Games Workshop, the owner of the series, has expressed interest in toning down many of these key elements in order to reach a wider audience. However, there is a strong backlash by the consumer base. Boycotts of this new, thoroughly 40K material led to them keeping their flagship franchise the way that it was. Instead, they launched the less overtly problematic Age of Sigmar. This decision led to a golden age for the company, as it is now more profitable than it has ever been. So what the fuck is this nonsense? Did this guy just realize that he completely contradicted himself? He talks about how commercialization of a hobby means the death of the subculture, but talks about how because Warhammer decided to gatekeep, now they're doing more commercialization than ever? Like, what? You know what he's complaining about, though? He's talking about, like, webcomics, tween novels, licensed spin-offs. Warhammer as an IP is surprisingly okay. Like, I'm not going to explain to my kids why Slanesh is the best Chaos God, but I will explain to them why Genestealer cults are the most based faction in the entire game. Shout out to Sig Marxism. Whitewashing war crimes in children's media is definitely a topic worth diving into. Is the Warhammer universe pretty hardcore and grimdark? Yes, absolutely. But it's also so hardcore and grimdark that it ends up looping all the way around to being completely ridiculous. We have dancing murder clowns that get off on basically torturing babies and orphans and stuff like that. That's literally your 10-year-old's first horror original character. Get the fuck out of here with your high horse nonsense. By saying that they're more popular than ever means that Warhammer has reached mainstream commercialization. They're starting to make Warhammer movies and TV shows now. Finally, because all we had were those goddamn brilliant CG trailers. And all the Warhammer Plus stuff, we have to pay for that. Oh. How much do you want to bet this kid is going to complain about Henry Cavill being too handsome to be the face of the franchise? And, you know, the Adeptus Custodes aren't really that cool just because, you know, Henry Cavill mains them. Then there's the entire Black Library, along with mountains of content on, you know, here, youtube.com. They show how messed up the 40K universe, like, really is. Getting upset that 40K is releasing material geared towards younger audiences when lifelong fans who have kids now want some kind of into the hobby for their young ones is weird and sad. If anything, it's selfish. Like, really. It's selfish that you're getting so upset that they are making content that you can't spend your money on. Which, once again, how weird is that? As a quick side tangent, I'm going to go over some common parenting mistakes that I see people make in regards to introducing gaming to their kids. This is something that I see on and off is, well, especially older parents, you know, the ones that are like closer to Gen X and they are millennials, that for some reason you need to force your kids to play older games before they can play like the newer stuff. Weird behavior, childless behavior, gatekeeping behavior. That's the only way I can really describe it. Lots of these games aged horribly. And forcing your kid to suffer through the giraffe section of The Lion King for Super Nintendo, or that one hallway chase sequence from Battletoads, isn't giving them stripes. It isn't earning their due. Whatever. They aren't, you know, learning to play real games. You're just being an asshole. And also, like, insisting that your kid, like, isn't ready for a certain game. Like, stop. Get some help. What's wrong with you? I've gone over this in my video of M-rated games I'd let my kids play, but depending on your kid and their maturity level, they can start dipping their toes in a game like Dark Souls or Persona. If anything, I'd argue the storyline of like Persona 4 and Persona 5 is way more apt to what young kids might be experiencing in real life. Just let them play the games that they want to play. My kids are my kids, but they are also their own people, and that is becoming very apparent with each and every passing day. That is something I think every parent forgets at some point along in their journey. But because of this fact, your kids will never like everything that you do one-to-one. My kids have no interest in games like Final Fantasy XIV or talking about the artistic merits of Alan Wake 2. They want to play Roblox. They want to play Minecraft, they want to play Fortnite with their friends. And from there, as they become curious about new experiences, I can help guide them. You know how my kids started getting interested in horror? Roblox jump scare games. Is it the most elegant? No, of course not. But I mean, things like mascot horror in general are pretty good gateway entrances to horror for, younger audiences. Like I said, my kids didn't care about who Goku was until it started popping off in Fortnite, and now they understand that Piccolo is the real hero of that show. Like, does that realization make my eyes roll a little bit? I mean, yes, but who am I to judge the methods to which my kids and I share common hobbies and interests? Also, don't give your kid a hard time for not knowing about a certain game or franchise or anything like that. It's pretty frustrating when people make fun of their own family members for not knowing about something when they never bothered to tell them about it in the first place. That whole "what are they teaching you in school" excuse? No, that doesn't cut it. If your kid doesn't know something, that is on you. It's on you for not filling them in and sparking that interest. In regards to the overall gaming scene, Nintendo, I think, is probably the best and worst example of doing this type of generational introductions, right? While the way that they constantly call back but evolve their classic game formulas and their game design is nothing short of absolutely breathtaking and amazing and wonderful, to sprinkle in some Super Mario puns. But the way that they handle access to their older back catalog, some of the most impactful games in all of gaming, as someone who cares about gaming preservation, that makes me very, 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 very sad. Pokemon is basically the same, but for the opposite reason. I think that many will argue that some of their remakes are fantastic updates to old games, for example, Heart Gold and Soul Silver. But the way that they approach innovating from a technical standpoint, like the actual gameplay loop and the formula, that bums me the hell out. Like, I get there's over 1,000 Pokemon, but man, there's gotta be a way that we can have something better than what we do now. Can you imagine telling your kids that they can't play the newest Pokemon game because it's not a real Pokemon game or some other bullshit like that? No, you can't? Good. That's the point. Most parents, most decent parents, like most even okay parents, don't enjoy shitting all over their kids' fun, even if they find it cringe for whatever reason. If my mom was a gamer while raising me during the 90s, I'm sure she'd find a lot of the stuff that I played on repeat boring, and probably derivative as well. Do I want my kids to be hardcore capital G gamers right now? No, absolutely not. Actually, I want the opposite. I mean, they're young. They complain if they can't play video games all weekend. So for them to be hanging out on PUBG bridges, no. But because of their initial interest in games like Roblox and Minecraft, they have started to ask me questions in regards to how these games are made. My eldest child has spent more time learning about 2D and 3D design and art and things like that, especially interior design, from playing The Sims. And my son has actually started getting his toes wet in game development by playing around with Game Maker Studio 2. This is the same engine that was used to make Undertale and Hyper Light Drifter. Will my kids one day come together to make a video game? I don't know, that'd be really cool, but I'm not going to force it. It happens, it's going to happen naturally, and I'm going to be there to encourage them and cheer them on every step of the way. But to force them to do it, that would make me no better than those parents who peaked in high school, and now their kids need to be peaking in high school too so they can live vicariously through that. So just to make sure that we're on the same page, when I talk about gatekeeping, I'm referring to the act of controlling or limiting general access or rights to something. Just about every community sees some type of gatekeeping, though it feels like it plagues video games and their players in a uniquely destructive way. The most common excuse for gatekeeping usually boils down to preservation of the culture, or basically the no true Scotsman fallacy. You're not a real member of the community because you don't meet the arbitrary standards of some weirdo freak. I think Patton Oswalt explains it well with his famous My Little Pony bit.
Did you take your daughter to see Star Wars?
I wanted to take her so bad to see Star Wars, but I showed her original Star Wars, I showed it to her, and she was And I couldn't, I didn't want to be the dad that's I'm gonna stamp out a little clone of myself and you're gonna enjoy this. I want to be the Star Wars version of the football dad, My dad was a Marine. My mom was a legal secretary. They didn't care about science fiction, and I found it on my own.
Right.
And my daughter is going to find her own thing on her own, and I'm going to let her figure out. You know what she's into? You know what her big thing is right now? My Little Pony.
Oh.
Okay, she's into My Little Pony the way that I was into Star Wars back in 1977.
So allow them the freedom to explore their own passions. Let them stumble upon a world or universe that feels tailor-made just for them, just as you did in your younger days. Who are any of us to dictate which content, franchise, or IP is the quote-unquote right one? Who holds the authority to label certain elements as genuine while dismissing others as normie shit? When we confine ourselves to singular perspectives and interpretations, we inadvertently constrict our own imagination, stifle creativity, and dampen curiosity. By limiting exposure to varied expressions of what we love, we miss out on forming our own unique opinions, preferences, and tastes. We deny ourselves the chance to unearth new experiences that might profoundly enrich our lives and broaden our horizon. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that parents should have no say in what their kids watch or read or play. Of course, there are going to be some things that are not appropriate for certain ages or situations, and parents have the right and the responsibility to guide their kids in making good choices. But there is a difference between guidance and gatekeeping. Guidance is when you offer suggestions and recommendations and explanations and alternatives. Like I said at the beginning, gatekeeping is when you impose rules and restrictions and judgments and ultimatums. Here is a reminder. At its core, many franchises, stories, or worlds exist as money-making endeavors. There's ongoing debate about, the ethics of consumption under capitalism, but it remains that when reboots or remakes emerge, someone experiences that medium for the first time. Each generation of Pokemon may have designs critiqued as lazy, yet for some 10-year-old, it's their initial step into a lifelong journey. Every Star Wars trilogy represents someone's introductory adventure into that iconic universe. And every day, someone, be it young or old, reaches out to the Force, unsure of what, if anything, will happen. So this section was supposed to be about Star Wars, but like I said, I started writing this intro about Teen Titans Go, and it just kind of snowballed. So let's just pretend that this all applies to Star Wars. So back in 2003, Cartoon Network adapted the new Teen Titans comic series by George Perez and Marv Wolfman from back in the 80s. This gave birth to a hugely popular show called Teen Titans. The series was very well known for its character development, action-packed sequences, sharp humor, and really stellar voice acting. Each season spotlighted a different main team member along with their nemesis. This TV show ran for 5 seasons and concluded with a made-for-TV movie in 2006. But even though it's considered ahead of its time now, and it's looked back on fondly, when it first debuted, it was absolutely hated by gatekeeping real nerds. These real comic book fans hated the more anime-inspired look, and along with the fact that they actually worried about things like teenage romance in a group called the Teen Titans Go Wonder. They considered it just a watered-down kids' version of the, hardcore and gritty Teen Titans that they grew up with. And that any nerd worth their salt would just, ignore all this kiddie stuff and just stick to the source material. Nearly 1 decade later, we all moved on with our lives, but Cartoon Network decided to revive the series. They retained the original voice cast, but they decided to opt for more of a sketch comedy type of format. This sudden change left die-hard fans of the old revised series scratching their heads. Instead of a continuous narrative, the show now presents standalone episodes, and moreover, the animation went from a dramatic anime-inspired shift to something that could basically be summed up as CalArt style. As someone who was actually really into anime at the time of the debut of Teen Titans, and weirdly enough, I gave my friend Hunter a lot of crap for liking Avatar: The Last Airbender when that was premiering, because of the fact that it was anime inspired. So yeah, I was in high school, I was a hypocrite, what are you gonna do about it? Leave a comment and chastise me, because I need the engagement. Anyways, I think the reason that this particular show is the perfect example of gatekeeping on both sides for me is because I was one of those people that felt completely disgusted by the idea of Teen Titans Go. I was saying the exact same thing a lot of these chuds and nerds are saying now, that it took something that I really enjoyed, something that was a part of my childhood, and it was just completely destroyed. The original Teen Titans cartoon just basically opened up a multitude of different avenues of entertainment for me, with its different inspirations and the way that it told its story. And it's, I mean, because of Raiden, that's the reason that I'm into goth girls. That's like my wife right now, so. And what did they do with my beloved characters? They distilled them into flanderized levels of exaggeration and stereotypes, along with mainly focusing on what I considered at that time low effort and juvenile humor. Do I still feel that way about the show now? Not entirely, but I think that most of the jokes are obviously geared towards younger audiences, but that's the point. It's not supposed to be something for me. It's supposed to be something for my kids. With all that being said, because my kids enjoyed it, I wanted to find something in it that I could enjoy as well, something for me to be able to connect with them. In my time with the show, I found out that it really wasn't as bad as a lot of people made you think. Despite the departure from the original show's depth, I find myself defending it for pretty much one significant reason. It introduced my kids to the DC universe. Another show that did the similar trick, DC Superhero Girls, but we don't see people up in arms and complaining about that show, do we? I also personally think it's more fun to kind of work backwards, laughing at the references that my kids don't get, and then showing them the source or explaining why. Especially because 9 out of 10 times, the kids think that it's their idea to learn the source material. It gives you a chance to explore the vast depths of pop culture in a way that's more organic, and for my brain, it makes way more sense in how art as a whole, just art as a word, is connected to everything. I think one of the most enjoyable staples in children's cartoons is the layers of jokes that are told that are only understood by specific audiences. In this particular instance, I'm talking about adult jokes in kids' cartoons. I think that Teen Titans Go actually does a pretty good job of taking advantage of the flanderization of their characters and using that to talk about real-life things through the exaggerated personalities of these exaggerated characters. So for instance, there's an episode where Robin goes on a very accurate tangent about housing equity and what it means to pay a mortgage, and essentially why buying and flipping rental properties is probably the best way to make money. At first I thought that was a very disgusting thing to try to teach my kids. He was raised by a billionaire, for Christ's sake, so of course he would be a landlord and just be flipping properties. And yes, I know that it's supposed to be Dick Grayson in this universe, and you know what? That actually makes it funnier, because Dick Grayson is usually considered the most Boy Scout of all the other Robins, so I think that makes it even more hilarious. Could it be considered character assassination? Absolutely. But it's cartoons, and that's what makes it funny. There's an episode where Cyborg gets access to a credit card, immediately goes into debt, which is something that honestly hit a little bit too close to home, if I may be honest. Pretty much started pulling out the whole Leo DiCaprio pointing meme throughout the points made in the episode. And then there's another one where Beast Boy discusses the pros and cons and pluses and minuses of doing a 4-year degree versus something like a trade school. And of course, if anyone's going to be talking about anything based on this show, it's going to be Beast Boy. Also going back to that credit card episode real quick, it reminded me of an episode of Rocko's Modern Life. Like, I think one of the first episodes of the entire show, where he got a credit card and went to a mall and then basically went straight into debt doing something similar. When I made that connection in my brain, I realized that I can't really hate this show for impacting my kids in a way that impacted me with my weird-ass 90s cartoons. As I've gotten older and I've read more of these stories across the medium, and I've just stopped caring what a lot of these vocal grognards are yelling about, I started to realize that we actually do need these different stories across the spectrum. I think most of us can agree that we're all kind of tired of the whole dark and gritty superhero thing. And what I've seen in the new Superhero Legacy movie, it looks like they're trying to do something that is more inspired by like All-Star Superman and other Silver Age storylines, which are a bit more optimistic. The whole Infinity Saga was literally more than enough for an entire lifetime. And as much fun as it was, I'm really never investing my entire emotional energy and time into something like that ever again. Please don't look at my YouTube watch history in regards to Warhammer lore videos. Those do not count. As we get older and we attempt to try to introduce our hobbies and interests to our loved ones in general, I think just we all need to remember getting someone hooked is getting someone hooked. regardless of how you do it. Just because somebody didn't fall in love with something the same way that you did doesn't mean that it's fake love. It just means that they found a way to love a part of something that you never saw before, and you could now potentially see it that way as well. It's crucial to have a blend of different tones, takes, and interpretations of these stories, not just darker themes. Teen Titans Go and other pieces of media that take a similar approach to franchise reboots may not be done well a chunk of the time, but I can definitely argue that at the very least they do their job in introducing these younger generations to these stories that have been around for hundreds of years. Apparently, there is a saying that even lawyers can't know all the law. If that's the case, in the same vein, no fan should ever feel the pressure to know every single tiny detail to prove that they are a real fan. Demanding that level of knowledge as validation of fandom, as a justification of something, is just crazy. At the very most, or at the very least, it's just harmful to the thing that you adore. The issue of gatekeeping in fandoms extends beyond the immediate impact on current enthusiasts. It casts a shadow over the experience of newer generations stepping into these realms. The insistence on encyclopedic knowledge is as a litmus test for genuine fandom distorts the essence of what draws individuals into these franchises. Not everyone has to know all the trivia about Darth Bane to love Star Wars. The love for a fandom doesn't need validation through a rigorous test of trivial details. Each person's connection to a series or universe is deeply personal, shaped by how it resonates with their lives. Not possessing comprehensive knowledge of every minor aspect doesn't diminish someone's authentic passion for a particular thing. However, the detrimental effects of intense gatekeeping tarnish the brilliance of these narratives. Communities that strive for broader recognition often recoil when it arrives, rejecting the very spotlight that they sought. This cycle undermines the beauty of these stories, leaving newcomers with a skewed understanding of what it means to be a part of these worlds. It's a bummer how gatekeeping messed with me in my life. I blocked myself from trying cool things like cosplay and anime, thinking it wasn't the right kind of fun for me. And trust me, it made me a better nerd. Hell, even recently, there were a few months where I would just sit there and kind of rag on my kids' memes because of the fact that they were basically just updated millennial memes. And now I actually revel in the fact that I know the origin of the memes, and then I show it to them, and they're sitting there like, how did you already know that? And the fact that I already knew the origin of the meme and I could probably reference more before them makes it not cool. So I win. But in regards to how I view, share, and express my passions and my hobbies with my kids, I'm all in. I'm painting minis, loving anime, playing role-playing games, you name it, I've probably done it. I'm personally done missing out just because some folks decided what was correct in fandom. It's more fun to embrace all the different flavors without worrying about the gatekeeper's rules. And if all goes well, my kids will be there along for the ride. I will get to learn and discover many new and exciting things I never would have found before if it wasn't for my kids. And while we go on these adventures together, I will have the ultimate pleasure of discovering what makes them, well, them. Okay, that's it. We're done. Another banger in the pot. If you made it this far, thank you. I'm going to beg you again, please leave a comment for the sake of the YouTube gods. As always, this is obviously something that was pretty personal to me, so I just decided to go all in and talk about it. I really want to know your thoughts, your opinions, not just gatekeeping children, but just gatekeeping as a whole. Like, it's something that, as I get older, it's just harder for me to understand. Especially when people will sit there and talk about, oh man, I can't wait until, like, Warhammer. Warhammer is like the perfect example that encapsulates like everything in this video. I don't know. I want people to have fun, and I want people to share nerdy things together. And I feel like apparently that's just so hard. But anyways, let me know what you think. Like, share, subscribe. If you know anybody who acts like how I talked about in this video, send this to them. And then have them come here and then leave me angry comments for engagement. So that way I can help get this video out there more. Yeah, I broke 200 subs while filming this video, so that's neat. 201, baby, we did it. And I guess we'll see. I actually have my next 2 videos planned out, so hopefully January will be fun. Once again, thank you if you're still here. I will hope to see you guys in the next one, and thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Uh-oh. My toddler just woke up. Bye.